Okay, so we are live. I am super late, but yeah, shit happened. So I'm better doing it now than never, I guess. Yeah, so basically what I wanted to do right now is I wanted to have a short discussion about labor rights in the Netherlands and particularly talk a little bit about the campaign that I'm busy with. So I am an activist that's active for the campaign Voor14, which is basically a campaign that at its core, the most simple thing it's striving for is to increase the legal minimum wage in the Netherlands so that people can earn a decent living wage. So right now, the minimum wage based on a 40-hour week is around about €9 something, €9 50 something per hour, and that is not enough for people to live off of. And we want to basically make that €14 an hour, and it looks like a very big jump. And to some people, it might seem that way, but in reality, it's not really. So, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to increase the minimum wage in the Netherlands? So, the Netherlands is very interesting because it's one of the richest countries in the world. But if you look at how the wealth is distributed in the country amongst the developed nations, the Netherlands is actually number two when it comes to wealth inequality. Number one is the United States, and the Netherlands is number two, which is not a very flattering statistics. So if you look at the numbers, basically, if you look at each segment in society, so for example, if you look at how much wealth the top 10% of all the households in the country own, and of all the wealth in the country, they basically own like almost 70% of all the wealth in the country, net wealth, so positive wealth. So if you like put in all the value of all their assets, businesses, things that they own, houses, and add all the debt to it and everything, and everything together, they on the net positive they come out at 70% of all the wealth in the country. Only 10% of the population of all the households, and the bottom 60% of the whole population, so all the households in that bottom 60%, they own negative wealth. That means that they have more debt relative to the amount of positive wealth that they actually own. And that is insane. And the lower you go in the scale, so if you look at the bottom 40 and if you look at the bottom 20, like the lower you go, the less people own and the more debt they have. And it's insane. So saying that in the richest country in the world, so much of the wealth is concentrated at the top. And you can see this, you can see the effects of this, of course, if you only look at around in the country. I mean, if you pay attention, if you look at the statistics, look at the news, you can see this resulting in things like wages have been stagnant for decades. You see that the minimum wage, for example, is actually lowered in value over time while the country has gotten richer and richer. You see more and more people working on the minimum wage. You see more people that are dependent on low-paying jobs. You see the amount of food banks are increasing in this country. You see the amount of like shady contracts that people have are going lower and lower. Sorry, the shady contracts are going higher and higher. So more people are working in like what they call flex contracten, which is like contracts that are not set for a certain. So you don't know how long you're going to be working there. They can basically fire you any month, and people are earning not so much in these contracts. You don't know what hours you're going to be working. You don't have a set schedule. So it's very unstable and it's very bad for people who want some economic and some financial stability in their lives. So it makes it very difficult to like plan ahead. And and it's a very easy way to keep people also in control, because if they're low wages, they have to work more hours. That means they can't spend time doing other things. They can't spend time learning about what's happening in the country. In politics, for example, it's a lot more difficult to do that if you're constantly stressed working to be able to make ends meet at the end of the month. And so there's a lot of aspects to this. And basically what we want to do is we want to raise the minimum wage so that people can at least not only work to survive, we want people to work to live a decent life. Because if your labor cannot provide you a decent life, what is the point of that labor? Why should we have these low paying jobs? Why should any job be paid so low that you have to be basically living on survival? What is the point of that in our society? And so that's basically the question you were asking, like, why should we have a significant portion of our society being paid low wages, so low that basically they're in poverty? It's insane. And if you look at the jobs that are being paid these poverty wages, these are jobs that are like very important. These are jobs in healthcare. These are jobs in a supermarket, which now during the corona crisis, we can see how important these jobs are, because if there are no people working in the supermarkets, we can't get food. These are jobs in people who deliver the mail, people deliver packages, which is incredibly important for a functioning economy. These people are paid absolutely horrible. And if you look at the companies that are employing these people, these companies are rich as shit. They're absolutely swimming in money. Like they can easily pay something like 14 euros easily, but they don't do that because they don't want to. And there is no incentive for them to do so. Well, on the other hand, there's actually incentive for them to lower wages as much as possible, because the lower the wages, the more money they're saving, and the less rights laborers have, the more they can get away with, and that's happening a lot in this country, sadly. So when as working as part of this campaign, like when I started with, I'm like, yeah, this is a very cool thing to be part of, and I'm happy to be part of it. But like once you're like in it and you like think about, what does it mean to work? Why are we working? Are we working to live? Are we working to get a better life? Are we working to generate money for people that own multi-billion dollar corporations? What is the point of working? And if you think about this, then you see, like, if we have a society and that we require people to work, they should be, at the very, very least, get decent contracts that are not something that they can get fired the next month. You should get decent pay so that they're at least living not in poverty. They should get at least some freedom to be able to take vacation days, for example, to be able to go on vacation. Everyone should be able to go on vacation. And all these things are possible because we structure our economy in a way that benefits large multi-billionaire corporations while screwing over the little guy. And by little guy, I mean the the big majority of the entire working population, which is insane. And talking to people, like going on the street, talking to people, hearing their stories and hearing their experience with working at these type of companies, working in these conditions, it's insane that we allow such abuse happening inside a country that can do a lot better, especially because we have the means, we have the money, we have the resources to get people affordable jobs. Look at Albertine, for example. Albertine is one of the richest companies in this country, and it falls under a bigger company which also owns Bol.com and also owns Khal and some other things. And they are absolutely raking in, especially during this crisis, they're raking in a shit ton of money right now. And if you look at how much the workers are being paid, they're not even being paid like extra, like hazard pay for working in these conditions. And they're still being paid absolutely crap. So and what's interesting is that when you look at profits in a company, one thing that people often forget is the fact that these profits are only generated because of the labor that these low paid workers are putting in. So say Albertine doesn't have laborers, they can never generate money. They can never have profit because they're ultimately and utterly dependent on the workers. Yet why do these workers not deserve some of that wealth that they generate through their profits? And you can count this for every single job basically. Like if you're doing labor and you're generating profit for such a company, why are you not entitled to a decent pay at the very least? And I'm certainly sure that a CEO does not deserve 200 times the salary of its lowest paid employee, because they're not really putting in the work to deserve that much money. And people will all very quickly defend CEOs, saying, "Ah, no, but they're doing an important job, blah blah blah." And you could argue that yes, they have a lot of responsibility. They make a lot of important decisions to that heads the company in certain directions. But so do the laborers also have a very important, very how do you say? They're also carrying a burden, because if someone on the work floor stops working, the company will immediately suffer in profits. Because if someone stops working, then there's less clients that can be attended to, and then there's less shelves to be filled, and these things will slow down the whole money-making process, and the company will suffer as well. If all workers stop working, if everyone on the floor stops working, the company will completely come to a halt. While if the CEO decides, I'm going to stop working for a while, the company, the money-making process, the company as a as a whole will continue working. That's not to say that CEOs aren't important. You could argue if CEOs are necessary, but that's another discussion. But the fact that they earn so much while they're not really the ones that are generating the profit is ridiculous, because it is those on the floor, it's those that are earning these ridiculously low wages, those that are working in poverty, those that are working without a home, those that are going to the food bank, they are the ones that are generating the profit. And so they deserve to, at the very least, have a decent wage of which they can live. And that's why we are advocating for 14 euros an hour. And what is this 14 euro based on? So if you look at European Union guidelines, basically they state that for a country to, for a country to have a decent minimum wage, they should take at the very least 60% of the median income of the population. And in the Netherlands, that would correspond with 14 euros an hour. So with paying people more, you're also redistributing the wealth inside the country, inside companies, because that wealth is then shifting a little more to the bottom instead of concentrating at the top. And by then you will also help people live a lot more decent life. And this will be better for everyone. I mean, if people are earning more, they're less stressed. That also makes them more healthy. They're able to go out and participate economically a lot more, because they can go to restaurants now, they can go to shop, they can do a lot of these things that previously they weren't able to do because they didn't have the money to do so. Of course, you can talk about consumerism, which is not a problem, but that's not the point. The point is that people are able to participate in the economy, that they help keep up, but they can't now because they're earning too little. And businesses will also thrive because they're suddenly getting a lot of more customers. And we can also talk a lot more about the effects of if you were to implement an increase in minimum wage, what will happen. You can discuss a lot of different scenarios, and you can also look at real life examples of where they have done this in different countries and what were the effects of that. Spoiler alert, a lot of the doom and gloom that usually come with, but if you do that, you'll ruin the economy for X and Y reasons. Technically, that's not really the case. But that'll be another discussion for another day, which I will get to, perhaps even tomorrow, actually. And I think that will be it for today. Let me see. What else would I be able to say? Okay, let me just talk a little bit about our campaign. So I've talked previously, in any case, just now about what the point of our campaign is, but it's actually a lot broader than that. So yes, we want to increase the minimum wage, but once that is reached, we're not gonna say like, oh, we are done, problem solved, we can go about our lives. No, because the idea, the fundamental idea behind the purposeful creation of low wage workers, so an entire lower class, and increasingly growing working class, the philosophy behind this idea is something that affects so many more other aspects of our society. It affects how we view ourselves, how we value ourselves as human beings, because now the way we treat people is that if you are not working, you don't deserve to live. You don't deserve to have a house. You don't deserve to have food. You don't deserve to have healthcare. You don't deserve to have any of that because you're not working. Work is what determines your value as a human being. And that is something that needs to change. We have to go to a society that is beyond the idea that labor and explicitly generating wealth for someone that is above you, because that is what our system is actually designed for to do. That is what gives you value as a human being, because it doesn't. People deserve to have a home. Housing is a human right, or people would argue no. I mean, housing market is partially privatized, but that's another discussion. food and water, are human rights. Healthcare should be human rights. These things are something that you have to guarantee to everyone, regardless if they're working or not. And people try the opportunity to be able to work and do what they please. And we have to move towards a society that values people less based on the labor that they're doing, but more the fact that they are people that simply deserve better. And that's what we want to achieve. That's very broad, of course, but that's basically what we want to achieve in our campaign. Because after we're done with this minimum wage, after we have hopefully reached the increase in minimum wage, the next thing is to go to how do we change our work culture? How do we change our idea of labor and our relationship with labor? But also, how do we change our way of how we interact with each other as individuals within a society? How do we organize ourselves in society to be able to improve our society as a whole? Because if you look at these huge multi-billion international companies, they are very well organized. They are very well put in places where they know they need to be. They are very well versed in the laws and the economics. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're working together. They're working with politicians to write the law. I mean, if you look at the Eerste Kamer in the Netherlands, I mean, there are a lot of big industry people in there writing the laws. It's absolutely insane, but no one bats an eye. And they know what they're doing. But as a society, as a whole, we're very fractured. We're very, very focused on the individual gratitude, individual gratification. Very focused on me and my small community around me. But there's no large-scale organizations that's fighting for common good, for common improvement, fighting for our own values. Right now we're only voting every few years for the party that says the thing that we're like, that aligns a little bit more or less what I'm saying, or that guy sounds nice, let me vote for that person. Well, and then we're at the whims of the politicians who say, this is what we think is good for you, so vote for us so that we can do what we think is good for you. Well, it actually should be the other way around. That we should be able to know more or less, at least have a direction of what should be good for us as a public, as a society. And then politicians should be forced to make our lives better. They should be held accountable. They should be told, this is what we want, and we want this to be done, and you have to do it because you're literally working for us. But that's not how it is right now. And to do that, you need to organize society. You need to have people forming communities. You need to have people talking to each other, understanding what's happening. And that is one thing that we are doing now with this campaign, is that we have a lot of different people from all kinds of different backgrounds. And we're organizing, we're forming connections. We know what we stand for. We know what we're fighting for. We have our principles. We have our way of organizing within our group. Basically, we do it on a horizontal structure, so we don't have anyone calling the shots or anything like that. Like, everyone discusses with each other. We all do mutual agreement when we decide to do things, and it works really well. And this is something that should extend largely in our society, that we need to know collectively what is it that we want, what are the problems that we have, and how do we fix them, and how do we want politicians that are put in charge to do so, and not the other way around, where we're like, politicians will tell us what the problems are and then offer us the solutions, and then we have to pick and choose which one we find the most appealing, because otherwise you will never truly get to what you as a citizen, as a society, really want to fix. You'll just have to wait until you hope that someone comes along and sells you the solution, and after doing that, and after getting power, hope that they actually keep their promise, which is of course always complicated because you also have multiple parties, blah blah. But in any case, I think that's enough for today. Enough for now. I hope you found this interesting in any case, and made you at least think a little bit about, why am I working? What rights do I have, and what rights should I have as a laborer, as someone who is doing labor? And how are people being treated today? Getting how are they getting their justice, and how can we improve upon that? And one thing you can do, what's the best way to talk to politicians? So that is very difficult. I mean, one thing, so that's actually what I'm going to get at. One thing to do is to organize like we're doing, and to protest, go out and voice your concerns. That's one way to do it. I mean, another way is, for example, to politicians sometimes host interactive events, so you can go and talk to them directly. If you are part of an organization, it also makes it a lot easier to talk to politicians, because if you have a large group of people behind you and you can represent yourself as, hey, we are this, there's something to make it worthwhile for a politician to actually come and talk to you instead of just being a random person. So, and protest, of course, like I just mentioned. So protesting is, of course, one way to bring attention to it, and also bring attention to it to the media, and more people getting talking about it. And you also apply pressure that basically forces politicians to start considering certain ideas, and that can also reflect in how well their voting goes during election. The voting goes during the election for them. But yeah, it's difficult, of course, because it's very difficult to have that direct contact with politicians. But protesting is definitely one way to put your ideas out there, put them on the spot, let the media put attention to it, and like get it out there, and hopefully more people react to it. So coming then to protest, on the 1st of May, this Friday, it's Labor Day. And what we are going to do, because it's Corona, of course, they have to do it safely. What we're going to do, we're going to go out in the streets in small groups of maybe 2 or max 3 people at a time. We're going to go in different places, and we're going to, I'll get to that real quick. We're going to go and we're going to draw with chalk on the floor, like different things related to our campaign. So I can thank you for all the below pay workers. They deserve better, minimum wage of 14 euros. But also you can like chalk other different things that are also related to labor struggles, other things related to problems that arise due to neoliberal capitalism, like sexism, patriarchy, climate destruction. All of these things we can go out and chalk. And one of them, in any case, is that stuff for our campaign. And I would urge everyone that's watching this and listening to this on Friday to also at least put something on your windows that the people can see. Write something, put it on the window. Show some form of solidarity with laborers and your fellow citizens, and put it out. Maybe take a picture of it, send it to me. We will definitely put it on Facebook, in our campaign page, and just like show, like, show that you are also struggling together with those that need that solidarity, and so that we can bring attention to, even though we are inside, we are still standing together, vocally expressing our our opinions with those that are currently facing this discrimination, those that are currently losing their jobs because these multi-billionaire corporations are firing people to save money, those who are losing their jobs because they had a super shitty contract and the contract didn't protect them from suddenly being signed off, the people who are still working in this crisis, not getting hazard pay, not living off a decent wage, and that need our support and deserve better, people who are suffering from climate destruction, especially vulnerable communities in many different places that are for usually outside of rich Western countries, and et cetera, and I can keep going on. And so 1st of May, if you can do any little thing you can do, make it count, show that you are there also together for other people. And we're definitely going to be on the streets. We're going to be chalking in different places. We're going to take pictures, and hopefully it becomes very interesting. And Ili, you said something about, what about people that don't have time? Yeah, so that's also part of it, right? If you have low wages, you force people to work more so that they don't have time to be politically active. They don't have time to fight for their rights. And that makes it even more important that for those who do have the time, that they at least use some of it to fight for people that can't. And because that's part of the system, to keep people dependent on certain economic systems, to keep people obedient, let's say. And phone is shaking. And that makes it very difficult for people who don't have the time to do it. Like, what can they do? Yeah, some people, despite this, still go out and are sometimes even like on the front of these type of movements. I mean, if you look at labor struggles throughout history, or any struggle for that matter, anti-racism and like feminist struggles, all these struggles, you see that is usually the working, low-paid people that are being discriminated against the most. They are the ones that are leading the fight. They are the ones that are actually bringing change, and definitely not the people on top. Definitely not. Every single struggle you look throughout history, it is the people on the bottom that are facing the discrimination, that are the ones that are out there fighting a struggle, and not because it's because they don't have any choice. Like, that is what they need to. If they truly want change and a betterment in our society, that's what they're forced to do, to go out despite not having the time, despite not having any of these things, and fighting the fight that needs to be fought for their own rights and for the rights of others, which is sad, of course, because this is especially the people that can do so, the people that have their privilege, the people that are the least oppressed should be the ones spending the most of their time doing these things. But it's, yeah, that's sadly not the case. So yeah, I mean, people do what they can, and those who can't spend the time, rely on others that can, and hopefully we can go forward. But yeah, no, I've been blabbing for long enough. Hopefully anyone, like, I'm happy that you stayed at least on for now. Hopefully anyone else that watches this, but I'll probably share more stuff about this related to this discussion later, because I mean, it's such an important discussion that is not being had enough. Like, the class struggle is something that is definitely not discussed enough, sadly, and it's related to so many other problems. But yeah, so that's basically it for now. I'm gonna stop this, and solidarity indeed. So I'll post also some links and other stuff and tweets later. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys at least made you think a little bit about stuff, and maybe you learned something new. Who knows? But yeah, if there's any questions about our campaign and what you could do to help, just let me know. Send me a message. And yeah, so talk to you guys later. Bye.